Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. If you want your marketing plan to succeed, have a little empathy, says our guest, Claire Brooks. Claire, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on the show, Bill.
Claire, you wrote a book called Marketing with Strategic Empathy. How would you define empathy?
Well, empathy, the researchers define empathy as a cognitive capacity to take the subjective perspective of another person. So, taking away all the complicated words, you could describe it as being able to walk in somebody else's shoes and really understand their needs, how they feel, how they behave, why they behave. That's probably the best way to put it, walking in somebody else's shoes.
Now, you bring that point out very well in an opening story in your book about the J.C. Penney Company. Can you give us a brief overview of that anecdote?
Yes, probably everybody knows who J.C. Penney is. And they have had a terrific reputation and a terrific relationship with their customers, who are mostly moms, trying to balance a household budget, trying to create a nice home for their family, buy nice clothes, and so on. And several years ago, they appointed a new CEO, a very successful guy. Ron Johnson came in from Apple stores. Looked as if he was going to be able to really help J.C. Penney to do even better. And unfortunately, he really demonstrated a complete lack of empathy with his core consumers, his core shoppers. He thought that, and he's actually quoted in the press as saying he thought that people were really tired of all of the coupons that J.C. Penney was offering, tried to get rid of that approach to couponing, just really regarding it as a drain on profits. And what he didn't understand is that the coupons and the deals that J.C. Penney were offering to their shoppers had an emotional purpose. They really gave these shoppers, these moms, permission to do something for themselves, permission to buy a new outfit, new shoes, and not just spend it on the kids. So when I do research with J.C. Penney shoppers, they'll tell me the kids come first. When if there's anything left, when the kids have had what I need to buy for them for back to school or whatever, then I will buy myself something. And a coupon gave her permission to do that. So Ron Johnson, this new CEO, really did not understand the emotional purpose of the couponing strategy. And quite extraordinarily, he actually was ousted after 17 months in the job, and was really responsible for driving J.C. Penney's sales down quite significantly. And the interesting thing is that if the company had had some empathy and even listened to the research that we've done for them, this would not have happened. So that's, really a case in point.
Now, that's kind of for most of us, because if I remember with J.C. Penney, they were going to have like a one-price shopping, and you were actually getting a lower price. You didn't need a coupon. You didn't have to figure out 20% off or 15% off or buy it by Thursday or any, of the things that would take calculations. So the people were probably financially doing the same, I guess, but just...
Yeah, it's quite a common strategy to try and wean shoppers off discounts. But, and so, on the face of it, Ron Johnson was doing a sensible thing in terms of the profitability of the company. But he had come from Apple, where they're targeting mostly young adults, without families, without responsibilities, who are shopping for themselves and prioritizing themselves. And you really fail to understand the mindset of a mom who has to make everything balanced and needs permission to spend money on herself.
And I just realized, obviously, I'm not a mom, but I went into a store recently and they asked for my email address, and I smiled at them and I said to them, and if you send me a coupon, I will come back and I'll use it in here. And they laughed, and of course, that's what they want to do. And obviously, I don't go back every time because the next morning I think I got a coupon from them. But they send periodic coupons, and if they send it to me, it's kind of like a reminder. Oh, yeah, you can save 20% if you buy this shirt this week or a pair of pants or a belt or something. And they do get me back there more often than if they just put an ad in the paper or sent an ad in an email that said, same old price, same old belt, do you want to buy it? So it definitely works, and now I think I understand what empathy is. and unfortunately, I guess JCPenney didn't understand. Now,
no, it's quite a chilling case study in some ways. This is a successful guy who should have been successful at JCPenney and didn't because he lacked empathy with his customers.
Now, in your book, Marketing with Strategic Empathy, you say that marketing is emergent, EMERGNT. That's kind of a word that I don't hear too often. So can you tell us what that means?
It means evolving, Bill. And here's what I've noticed. I've been working with Fortune 500 brand marketing companies for the last, a long time, but in my current role, the last 12 years. And, we're all taught at business school how marketing strategy should be developed. And it's done on an annual cycle, and it takes a couple of months, and it's very planned. And Henry Mintzberg, who's an academic at McGill University, was really the first one to uncover that it's not happening that way anymore. Sure, companies still have annual planning cycles, but because we're living in such a fast-paced world, the acronym is VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, a VUCA world. Everything's moving so fast that by the time the annual planning cycle comes around, everything's moved on anyway. And so more and more companies are finding that strategy needs to evolve. It needs to emerge. It needs to be adaptive. Adaptive marketing strategy is another way of describing it. So over the course of the year, and I'll give you an example. I recently worked with a very big tech company, really an admired company. And they had launched a device which had really exceeded market expectations. And way before the annual planning process came around, they figured out that they really needed to adapt or, work on their marketing strategy really fast so that they could leverage the success they'd had and defend their brand against other entrants who were eyeing this marketplace. And so in over the course of 3 weeks, working with the strategic empathy process, they really were able to uncover deep insights and really get some empathy with who was buying this device and why, and then activate those insights into their marketing strategy. So the point about strategic empathy is that empathy is one thing. Strategic empathy is about doing something. It's about activating your empathy into marketing action.
Now, Claire, I'd like to tell our audience, in case they tuned in late and didn't get your name, our guest today is Claire Brooks. She wrote a book called Marketing with Strategic Empathy, Inspiring Strategy with Deeper Consumer Insight, and that's who we're talking to right now. Now, Claire, is there a website you can tell us about, and where can we get your book, Marketing with Strategic Empathy?
And the book's available on Amazon. So if you just type in Marketing with Strategic Empathy, it'll pop up. There's also, my company is called Model People, all one word. So if you go to our website, www.modelpeopleinc.com, and then there's actually a page about the book, and there's some extra resources on there, some video that explains, talks about some case studies in the book. So that's worth a look if you just want a quick taster. www.modelpeopleinc.com.
And I'll tell our audience, Claire makes it very easy. If you like to do things quickly, you can look at the end of each chapter and kind of get the chapter in a nutshell. There's some great anecdotes, and I find we remember those. I'm sure a lot of people are going to remember the J.C. Penney anecdote because we don't want to make that mistake. Their business went way, way down, and what they did seemed kind of reasonable. It made it easier. You don't have to carry coupons. You don't have to flash them and have it scored and keep a list. And yet people didn't like it because they like to feel if they save 20%, that 20% could be put in another category for them, and mom could buy, I guess, a new outfit or shoes or pocketbook or whatever she wanted to spend her money on. Now,
Great point, Bill. And it seemed reasonable is a really great point, because the point about empathy is that if you're an executive, something can seem very reasonable. But if you haven't really understood what seems reasonable to your customers, you're going to get into trouble.
and I think you, in that one sentence right there, you've kind of explained everything, because it's the customer, not what the CEO or the manager or the vice president upstairs understands. Does the customer want green pants or a red hat or a blue pencil or face cream or something? And although that person upstairs may have no use for that product, if the customer wants it and if they want it in a big box or a little bag, that's the way it better be sold.
That's right.
Claire, you have another study in there about routers. And when I first saw that, I said, what's a router? So it shows how much I know. And I'm the person, when I open up an electronic device, I can't even find the on-off button. But just kind of briefly tell us about that and how that worked. I think that was on page 16 in your book.
That's right. This was a study that we did a couple of years ago. Now, you're not alone, Bill, and nobody really knew what a router was. And
I feel better now. Thank you.
Well, nobody knows what one is. And more importantly, nobody knows how to install one. So we did a project for, and the Insights director brought us in to work with their engineers, because he had an inkling that the engineers who do understand routers didn't understand how difficult other people find this, consumers find this. And so we did what we call ethnographic research, which is observational research that really watches how people do things and tries to understand the context in which they're doing something. So we went shopping with people. Shopping is a context. The store is a context. We watched people struggling to figure out what to buy and turning the boxes upside down and trying to figure it out. The sales staff in these stores very often couldn't help them. They didn't understand it either. And then we followed shoppers home and watched them trying to install a router, because you have to go through a setup system and install software, and it was all very complicated. And we took some video of all of this. Video is a very good way of helping people who think they know what customers want to develop empathy, because they can really see it firsthand. We took some video in store and in home, and it was showed to the engineers, and they got it. They finally understood why this was difficult for the average person. And the company went on to develop what they called a valet router, which actually had an interface that led the consumer step by step through this process of installing the product. They changed their packaging to help people understand what kind of a router to buy. So there were some big marketing actions that came out of this effort to help engineers and marketing people understand why this was so difficult for regular people.
And I'm the person, Claire, I'm the person who'd get stuck if it said, pick up the router in your right hand. I would say, what's a router? And only if there was one gadget that looked like a flashlight or a little keychain or something in the box would I know what a router is, because there's only one thing there. But if there's more than one, I'm going to be the person who says, okay, which one of these is the router? So already I'm lost in the direction. I'm frustrated. I'm going to be calling the company. And that's not what they want. They want me to be able to probably install it myself, have quick use of it, and be very happy with their product.
Absolutely. And this was a successful company. They were already market leaders. So you could say, well, why do they need to have empathy? But, they were able to really launch a product that was premium, that was more profitable, because they'd taken the trouble to understand what was difficult for their consumers.
And I love that way of doing it because then you really know what the consumer is going through and probably different age groups. The 18-year-old consumer may do it in, 2 minutes, and maybe the 28-year-old is 20 minutes. And when they get to me, it's a couple hours just to figure out how to get that router out of the box. Claire,
I'm sure you're doing yourself down, Bill.
no, I'm pretty honest about that. Claire, we want to find out more about marketing with strategic empathy from our guest, Claire Brooks. But at this point in the show, we like to remind our listeners that you're listening to The Secrets of Success. My name is Bill Horan. The show is produced at WHPC 90.3 FM at Nassau Community College. We'll be right back after this brief intermission.
WHPC 90.3, the radio voice of Nassau Community College, is looking for individuals, businesses, charities, or organizations in our local and global community that would like to donate to support our radio station. Whether you listen locally or online, here is how it works. Go to our webpage at ncc.edu/WHPC and click Donate Now. Or if you prefer, you can send a check to WHPC Radio, 1 Education Drive, Garden City, New York, 11530. Make check payable to the NCC Foundation. In the memo of your check, write WHPC Donate Now. Any contributions will help defray our operating costs, and it's tax deductible. This message was brought to you by the radio voice of Nassau Community College, streaming online at ncc.edu/WHPC.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Secrets of Success. I'm your host, Bill Horan, and today we're speaking with Claire Brooks, author of Marketing with Strategic Empathy. Claire, you talk about something called the strategic learning journey. What is that?
Well, strategic learning, Bill, is it's related to our earlier point about emergent strategies. It used to be that companies did strategic planning. Now they do strategic learning, and it's really important that organizations are strategic learning organizations. Strategic learning is learning about your customers and your consumers in an organized way, in a way which allows you to answer strategic questions that you have. Who are your consumers? Why do they buy your product? Why do they not buy your product? And so a strategic learning journey is something that my company designs for Fortune 500 corporations or marketing brands. And we take teams of executives on this journey. And it's important that the executives are from different functions across the organization. So there might be product people, marketing people, retail sales people. People need to learn together because success is usually a cross-functional effort. It doesn't usually come just from one department. So a cross-functional team going on a learning journey. And we will orchestrate this. We will design a series of interactions with their customers or their consumers, which will really show their products or their brands in context, how people use them in the home, how people shop for them, the emotional memories that are attached to their brands. We really go very deep. It's like peeling an onion. It's like finding out every single thing that you really need to know in order to serve your customers better. But going deep. Empathy is deep. It's deep understanding. Understanding your customers is a bit of a cliche. We're really talking about understanding the deeply needs, goals, values, the emotional attachment to your brand, the role of your brand or your product in culture, very decision-making, how people decide to purchase your brand. Very deep understanding.
Claire, I'm going to ask you about that framework question we talked about before the show, but I'm going to throw a little rock in the water right now. What about this crazy, crazy group that's out there, but there's 83 million of them, and they call themselves millennials? And they do weird things, like they walk down the street and they're reading a text, and they don't care if a bus is coming at them or an airplane or if they're walking into a lake. Does that mess up all your records? Because are they so different, or are they just like the rest of us, but just they do a few different things?
No, I mean, I think, Bill, they might look weird to me and to you, but they're also, these frameworks and these principles apply to millennials. In fact, my company does a lot of work with millennials. Millennials are a very important group of consumers because they're buying a lot of products, they're forming brand preferences, so it's important to understand the future of your brand in a lot of ways. And they're also, the older ones are in family formation mode, and that's the mode in which people buy houses and cars and start to really spend a lot of money. So it's important to understand them, and you can use these principles to understand them. They're not weird. They just have a particular, they're different from you and I. They grew up. They're digital natives. They grew up knowing that they didn't have to Google a map before they left the house, that everything's on their phone. And they've grown up checking reviews as they're shopping in the store. So a lot of it is digitally driven and driven by the fact that they are digital natives, but they're not weird. They are specific.
Claire, again, I want our audience to know that if you're enjoying what you're hearing and if you're fascinated, the book is Marketing with Strategic Empathy. It's by our guest, Claire Brooks, spelled Brooks. And Claire, again, I'm going to ask for that website and where people can get the book.
Yes, it's on Amazon, Bill, but we also have a page on our website with some extra resources on there, and it's www.modelpeopleinc.com. That's modelpeopleinc.com. And the company's called Model People because that's what we do. We model people and their behavior and their motivations, and we try to develop empathy in that way.
Now, that leads us perfectly into our next question. On page 43 in your book, you talk about 4 key frameworks that create a foundation for strategic learning. And I find this fascinating because all that goes on just to sell me some Rice Krispies or a new belt or a box of rubber bands, but there's someone like you in the background knowing that I want to buy them in a red box, or I want it to be a 6-ounce box or a 20-ounce box or something. So let's talk about those 4 key frameworks that you look at to set up that strategic learning process.
Yeah, Bill, these frameworks are important because, as you just said, we don't want to think about the decisions that we're making. So we develop what are called shortcuts or heuristics to make our decisions. And marketers need to be very aware of creating the right heuristics because those are the things that really trigger a whole stream of non-conscious emotions and decision-making that happens in a split second in our brain, but we're not aware of it. But it's been built up over time. And the 4 key frameworks are emotion. A lot of brands try to develop a very strong emotional connection with consumers because basically emotions dial up our ability to remember things, our desire to have something. If you have an emotional connection with that cereal that you just talked about, so that every time you see the yellow box, you have a pleasurable memory about being a child. That's a heuristic, that's a shortcut to a very deep emotional pool that has existed in you since you were a child, probably.
And honestly, that's true. I like Rice Krispies, and I like those little guys, Snap, Crackle, and Pop on the box, and I still buy them, and they've been selling them to me for over 50 years. So somebody like you did a good job in getting those 3 little guys on my cereal bowl.
And some of our strongest memories are formed when we're children. And so a lot of the work that we do is about uncovering those non-conscious emotions, those things that we're not immediately aware of. And we use a lot of techniques that help people to pull that out. It might be a metaphor or storytelling or visualization, helping people to go back in time and remember those early memories. So that's the first framework, emotions. The second framework is a little bit more rational, needs, goals, what are we trying to achieve? But I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Some needs are very functional, some needs are not functional at all. Some needs are really about who we are and the values that we have. So if you look at a brand like Tom's Shoes, for every pair they sell, somebody in a developing country also gets a pair of shoes. That's speaking directly to somebody's values, and that's a very higher order need. So framework 2, functional needs, but also the higher order needs. Framework 3 is culture. And culture is one of those things that really is difficult to understand. And a lot of the work that we do understanding culture is indirect. You can't ask people how their culture affects them. I mean, they can give you an answer, but it's probably not the right one. And culture is just to do with our background, maybe our ethnic culture, maybe the way that we were brought up. But culture is also to do with things like product category. So there's a car culture, there's a coffee culture, and understanding the systems of meaning that go into both our societal culture and also these product cultures requires a lot of work with visuals, again, storytelling. And there's a whole area of study called semiotics, which is about understanding the signs or the symbols of culture. That might be advertising. It might be something that I choose to wear or carry around. So it's something visual, some sign that I'm expressing a culture or that I'm living culture in a particular way.
Claire,
So that's the third framework.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is all just so amazingly interesting to me that I'm not just buying the cereal because I like it, but because of the box, because of a memory, etc. And we'll never be able to cover it all in the time allowed in the show. But
Sorry, Bill. I'm not rambling on.
No, not at all. But what I would like our audience to know, if you'd like to know more about this and how companies sell you products and how you can sell your product, the book is called Marketing with Strategic Empathy. It's by our guest, Claire Brooks, Brooks. And Claire, that website real quick?
www.modelpeopleinc.com.
Thanks so much for being with us today. Again, we'd like to remind our audience that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on WHPC 90.3 FM. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we'll continue our journey to success.